Alright guys, we've missed some shows, we've had some technical issues, but we're back. Gio and Mr. Mystergio review rock and roll wrestling has returned for, coincidentally, the return 2024. We do apologise, but to reintroduce ourselves, I'm Gio, a long-time pro wrestling fan. I really enjoy getting to the rock and roll wrestling shows, and I'm delighted to be back. And I suppose we better introduce Mr. Mystergio as well. Yes, it's Mr. Mystergio, the dark half, the smart half, the half you all want. No, the half you all need to hear. I know you've all been wanting, missing, and craving my insight to help lift the entire collective IQ of the rock and roll wrestling audience, and I've been able to find time in my jet setting lifestyle to get dragged into doing one of these. Gee, I thought you might have been a little bit more gracious about missing shows and stuff, but I guess that's you. I really shouldn't be surprised. Anyway, the show got underway with Jay Sorbet taking on Morgan Rose. This was a really competitive opening match with Jay fighting the honourable fight as usual and Morgan Rose doing whatever he could to gain an advantage, underhanded or otherwise. But in the end, the class and experience of Jay Sorbet came out on top, scoring the pinfall victory. Underhanded or otherwise. Straight away you start besmirching one of the finest talents of the rock and roll wrestling roster. It's combat in there and Morgan Rose is not afraid to get his hands dirty trying to pick up the win. I'll always take that over someone too busy being nice. Unlucky for Morgan Rose here, but he'll get his dues. Next up we had Hunter Hayes come out. After being retired by Moses, he poured out his heart in a fourth wall breaking promo. He then introduced the new rock and roll GM, Piers Austin. Piers started telling us all about his plans and excitement for what was to come with rock and roll wrestling before he was interrupted by our rock and roll wrestling champion, Moses. Moses tried to throw his weight around, but credit to Piers here, he stood firm, he refused to be intimidated, and when Moses threatened to walk out, he told him he'd strip the title if Moses didn't compete tonight. Who is this guy? Coming out in his Nick Aldis wannabe suit, thinking on his first night he's going to try and pander to the fans and try to emasculate the champion, the man who represents the whole company. I'll have a lot more to say about him later, but it's just another example of Moses continuing to fight against a stacked deck. Next up, we had the Tag Team Championships on the line as the original Greasers, accompanied by Flame, defended the titles against a team of Dicko and Ethan Hughes. This was a fast-paced match, and the apparent makeshift team looked to have the match, despite the distraction tactics of the Greasers and Flame. But Robbie Zuko was able to take advantage, hit a flying elbow while his partner was pinned, reversed the pinfall, and the Greasers escaped with another win. But after the match, Tristan Slade seemed to take issue with Zuko, maybe because he caught some of the impact from Zuko's match-shaping elbow, I'm not really sure. Still, not all appears well in Greaser's land. I expected the Greasers to win, but not to see what happened afterwards. Unlike you, I have millions of friends, and I was informed at the show I missed that there was some frustration between the Greasers as well, and I hope they can sort it out, because this tag team is head and shoulders above the level of competition in rock and roll wrestling, and they can hold the belts for as long as they want to, as long as they can sort out their problems, which I really, really hope they do. But next up we had the Otis Invitational, and the latest competitor to step up to the plate was The Bachelor. This was another really even competitive match, as we should expect. The Bachelor is hung with people like the Australian hero Lee Morrow, and we know Otis is on a bit of a streak. There was a huge cloud over the finish of this match though. The ref was accidentally knocked during the match, and while he was recovering, The Bachelor had Otis beat 1-2-3. But when the Bachelor went to revive the ref in what I must say appeared to be a little bit of an overly aggressive manner, Otis was able to take advantage and pick up the win. After the match, a clearly frustrated Bachelor pushed the referee around, and look, I understand his frustration, but hopefully the Bachelor can keep his head in the future. The refs do a hard job, and they're only human. The refs do a hard job? I suppose for a lot of the fans out there, the ones who cheer Piers, counting to 3 is a real hard job. But there was something a little more concerning for me in this match. First of all, a harder edge for the Bachelor might be just what he needs, but as you know, I'm a huge Otis fan, and it might have been my imagination, but I thought he spent a little bit of time pandering to the fans looking for their approval. It's fine to tell people how good you are, but while it looks like The Bachelor might be getting a little bit meaner, which I really want to see, I hope Otis keeps his mean streak too. Like I said, it could have all just been my imagination. After a brief intermission, we then had Lockie the Tradie against Derek Fisher. As Mr. Mystergio referenced, we missed the last show where apparently Fisher decided to trade in his friendships, his goodwill, his honourable character, and start showing a new aggressive attitude. He really tried to get after the tradie here, but I think his new attitude might have cost him a little bit. He seemed rushed, distracted by the fans, and his head wasn't really in the match. And in the end, Lockie was able to pick up the win over him. I've got to admit, I really like the new Eric Fisher. No nonsense, a little bit mean, and not one care given about the fans if they boo him, cheer him, or whatever. Yeah, he might have lost here, but I think the new and vastly improved Eric Fisher will be climbing to the top of the card sooner rather than later. And now we move on to our main event. The Australian hero Lee Morrow taking on the one Moses, with Moses putting the belt on the line. Watching the show from ringside were Hunter Hayes and the new GM Piers Austin. This was an epic battle, a real struggle between the popular Morrow and the despised, but I will admit resourceful Moses. They went through the crowd, through the ring, and all over the Diggers Club. But it looked like no matter what he could do, Morrow would not be denied. He kicked out of the strongest offense Moses could muster, beat countouts despite continued assaults from Moses in the crowd, and Moses was becoming more and more desperate. The match then appeared to be over when, while the ref's back was turned, Moses brought a chair in and threw it to Morrow. Moses then collapsed to the floor, and when the ref turned around, a prone Moses laying on the mat, Morrow holding a chair, the ref called for a disqualification finish. GM Pierce then got involved, announcing that the match would not end like that, and the match was justifiably restarted. But then Eric Fisher came to the ring, and while Pierce, Hunter, and the ref were getting Fisher out of the ringside area, Moses hit Morrow with the belt and picked up yet another tainted victory. A tainted victory? Okay, here we go. First of all, who does this GM think he is? Why didn't he come out to clarify the Bachelor Otis result, or the tag team match, for example? Is he going to try and rewrite WWE history and decide in his own feeble little mind that all the matches Eddie Guerrero won with that chair stunt he really lost? No, this is clearly a conspiracy against Moses. A real fine start for the GM, who might have been wearing his Nick Aldis knockoff suit, but in my eyes it's covered in mud. And then people complained about Fisher coming out. I know it's probably beyond the thinking capacity of most of the people complaining about Fisher, most of the fans of Lee Morrow, but geez, you have Lee Morrow and two of the most powerful individuals in rock and roll wrestling working together in concert against Moses, and Fisher comes out to try and level the playing field. It still wasn't level. How could it be when the two big honchos were there against Moses? Moses deserves a lot of credit for overcoming this mountain, the conspiracy theory as well, and I really hope the new GM has a good hard look at himself and treats Moses with the respect that a champion deserves. Well, one thing is for sure, I can't wait to see what will happen at the next show, the second in Piers Austin's reign. Unfortunately, as I apologised earlier, we have been late with this video, as there's been a few things happening that sort of delayed the release, and unfortunately also we won't be able to attend the Friday Night Fight show, but we will be at the next Diggers Club show 100%, and that's all we've got for our first edition of Gio and Mr. Mystergio Review Rock and Roll Wrestling for 2024. We can't wait for the next show. Hope to see you there.